This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at GDC 2014. Joining me is John Hardy, Director of the Video Game History Museum. Welcome to the program, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about this museum. Is the museum right behind us? What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, the museum is right here, right now. Our museum is a traveling exhibit currently. We do about 5 or 6 shows a year. E3, GDC, GDC Next. We've done Kamikaze, PAX East, DICE. You know, we mix it up a lot. But basically, we're a traveling exhibit trying to raise awareness about what we do and try to get the word out so that we can eventually get a physical structure going.
How did you get involved with this?
So myself and my 2 partners, we've been collecting stuff way back before there was even people collecting. Mid-'80s. We've been doing it for over 30 years. And, we just felt the passion about learning more, not so much the games, but what goes behind them, what was involved in designing them, who the designers were. And so we just started gathering that information. And 30 years later, we've met up years ago and we just share that passion. Now,
for me, of course, I enjoy video games. I've kind of made a career out of it. But how do you go from enjoying video games to being an avid collector? At what point did you go from playing them to collecting them?
For myself, I can only speak for myself, not my 2 partners. For me, there was that aha moment when I first discovered a system that had not been released, and I went after it to try and find a prototype. It just intrigued me, like, why this piece of hardware never came out, or what was the story behind it? Was there some issue, legal issue, or and that kind of got me into the other side of not just game playing, but learning and researching more about the systems and the games.
It's amazing to, personally speaking, I see like the Atari 2600s and the Nintendos and the Segas and the whole thing, and I feel like a bit of a museum myself. What are your thoughts that, you've got this wonderful exhibit, and by the way, I'd like to hear more about what's in it, compared to video games where we are today. What do you think have been the biggest advances from point A to point B?
Well, certainly graphics. Dealing with the Atari, as you mentioned, you know very well what it was like. But I think we've also lost a little bit. I think there's been decreases in the sense of playability. There's a lot of games, back then you had games that they weren't graphically pretty, so you kind of had to use your imagination, but they were fun. So they had to focus on making the game fun to sell it, not so much just what it looked like. Anybody can put a nice picture up, but if it doesn't do anything, what good is it? And I think over the years, people have gotten away from that, and you said these big teams are designing these beautiful graphic games, but there's no sustainability in it. And I think now with mobile games, you're seeing more of that return to the old school style. 1 or 2 guys designing a game and making it a lot of fun. Little Twitch games that you can spend 15 minutes if you don't have 10 hours at a clip to sit there.
Can you highlight some of the elements of your museum? What kind of consoles, what kind of games do you have on display here?
Well, at this particular exhibit, we were asked to do a history of Nintendo. We did a similar exhibit about a week and a half ago at South by Southwest that was sponsored by Nintendo. So here, we just were asked to come up with a Nintendo theme. Last year at GDC, we did Sega. So as you can see, there's some beautiful pieces here. To my right is a Rob kiosk. I think there's only 1 of 2 of those in the world. It's just, as you look through the cases and everything, you'll see a ton of rare items and one-of-a-kind items that are really, really nice to look at,
when I think of the video game market, I always think of the latest and greatest, the highest technologies, and it's just a cool thing to have. Right. In your wildest dreams, did you ever think that video game technology in itself would appear in a museum?
Not at first, but eventually I knew there would be some type of, I don't want to say a market, but there needed to be some type of database or archive. Because even back with the Atari 2600, there were games that were, pulled from the shelves. There were games within Atari that they just discontinued and stopped selling because the titles were no longer viable. So I think there was a hint back then that someday some of these titles might be hard to find, or there needed to be somebody looking out to make sure that stuff doesn't just disappear completely.
For myself, I work at a University of Ontario Institute of Technology, and we specialize in immersive technology, but we also have a game development and entrepreneurship program. Now, building a museum like this, and looking at students today coming out of the game development field, doing all this beautiful graphics, do you think they have an appreciation of where they came from, where all this, adventure came from?
I don't believe that. In fact, my partners and I have always said that one of the true challenges that I think every game designer today should have to go through would be to try and code a game, say for the Atari 2600. I mean, there's people still making games for those systems, but and we know a lot of modern developers who did it just for fun to see what they could do. But to do that, and with that small amount of space, we're talking 4K, that's only 4,000 A's, B's, or C's, not the gazillion bytes and bits that we have today. So we always thought that would be a true test to test your mettle, so to speak, to go back and design a 2600 game or even just get something working,
Now, right now there's a lot of excitement about what we call immersive technology. So that's like virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on. Sure. Do you have any pieces in your museum, not necessarily at this exhibit, that speak to VR of decades past?
Yeah, I mean, we do have, at this particular museum exhibit that we're doing, being a Nintendo, we have, a 3D glasses, we have a Virtual Boy over there. But, in our museum itself, we pretty much have any kind of 3D thing that was designed over the years. Sega obviously had the 3D glasses. Even going back to some of the older systems, like the Jaguar, the Jaguar had a whole 3D helmet that was a virtuality type thing that was going to be an immersive, you'd be able to turn your head anywhere and see, and then obviously the modern stuff, you see stuff like 3DS even, that you can hold it up in the air and just walk around and shoot things, and it's amazing how far it's come, really,
Now, are you excited about things in the news today? Like, for example, I think you mentioned earlier Technical Illusions Cast AR, and we talked a bit about Oculus. What are your thoughts on these technologies?
Well, I haven't personally dealt with Oculus, but I hear it's a pretty impressive thing. I have seen the Cast AR system several times. I was astounded. I mean, to look down and I think it really takes it to the next level. I mean, when you're looking at it, you're looking around. It's just amazing. You feel like you could just reach out and touch it,
Now, thinking at video games past, I mean, technologies like this, and I'm not talking about Cast AR, but head-mounted displays, that drive for VR, for whatever reason, it didn't pan out that one time decades ago or two times. Like, it's been tried before. Do you think modern VR has a much better shot, and why do you think that is?
Just because of the leaps in technology that they've come with. I mean, you look at something so primitive as the old 3D glasses and the different, shutter and all this other stuff. I think it was a great idea. It was more gimmicky back then. Now, I think the way that technology has advanced, we have a much more real opportunity to actually utilize it in some type of, format that people can actually appreciate, and not just be like a one-off type thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, if people wanted to actually sample your museum, I mean, where should we point them to?
Well, the best bet right now is if you can't make it to one of the shows, like I said, we do E3 and all these other shows, but we don't have a physical place. That's what we're working towards. So we do shows as a traveling exhibit to raise awareness of our cause. But you can go to our website, it's vghmuseum.org, for Video Game History Museum,
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a really exciting exhibit. People are having fun here. And, in a way, I really think the game developers are rediscovering themselves right here. So congratulations.
Yeah, many of them do. So it was good.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Appreciate it.
This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at GDC 2014. We will, of course, be back with more. Thank you for watching.